These are the best picks in fantasy football. My top 15 must draft players of 2025. The players that you don't want to leave your draft without. And a common theme for me when drafting is I want to win. I don't know about you, but I don't care about 4th place. I don't care about 8th. I want to win. So I'm aggressive and I'm pursuing explosive football players that can win me my league. These are the 15 players you need to own in 2025. Before I get started, like the video. Gronk, spike that like button and let me know in the comments your must-draft player of 2025. I want to hear from you and your favorite target of 2025. Here are mine. Let's get started with early in the draft, the player that I want to own in 2025. It's Jahmyr Gibbs of the Detroit Lions. I believe that Gibbs gives you the best opportunity at an epic RB1 finish, an epic legendary running back season, and you can get him at 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5. Somewhere within the top 5 of your draft, in any format, you can get Jahmyr Gibbs. So it's not like you have to be locked and loaded at number 1. Jamar Chase is likely to go at that spot, right? So you can maybe have more of an opportunity to get Gibbs than Chase or maybe even Bijan Robinson. So that's why I went with Gibbs here. But there's a great argument for Gibbs. I believe that he has the highest ceiling among all of the elite running backs in 2025. He was the RB1 in PPR last year. People forgot. I don't know. They just don't realize that he was literally the best running back in PPR formats last season. And he was very consistent too. It wasn't just these explosive outings. He only had one game below 12 points last season. So very consistent, very explosive. He can win you a week, and he can do it in a plethora of ways. Pass catching, explosive runs, touchdowns. He had 20 touchdowns last year. People act like David Montgomery vultures them. No, he had 20 touchdowns. So Jahmyr Gibbs is just an incredible player. He is Sonic. They literally call him Sonic. He can make you miss, he can go the distance, and he's one of the best route running, pass catching running backs in the NFL. He had 1,900 total yards last year, and I feel like it's being slept on. He had 20 touchdowns last year. I feel like it's being slept on. Imagine if David Montgomery got hurt. Imagine if Jahmyr Gibbs got the backfield to himself. What would he do? That's why the ceiling is so high. Because even with David Montgomery last year having 221 touches and 12 touchdowns and over 1,100 total yards himself, he was still the RB1 in fantasy, Jahmyr Gibbs. So imagine if Montgomery got hurt. In games where Montgomery does not play, Gibbs has over 31 points per game. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So what if the Lions are going to phase out Montgomery more in the offense? What if they're simply trailing more in games because they're not quite as buttoned up from a coaching perspective this year? They have a tougher schedule this year. What if that means Gibbs is on the field more because they're trailing more because he's the pass catcher? That could actually lead to more fantasy points for Jahmyr Gibbs. So he is the early round must draft best pick in fantasy football. In round 2, or the end of round 1, depending on your format and depending on your platform, I love Nico Collins this year. Nico Collins will be on plenty of my teams. His ADP is currently 13th. So it's, the 2.1, the first pick of the second round. On a platform like Underdog, he goes at number 8, where he's aggressively pursued in the middle of that first round. So Nico Collins, you could make an argument that he'll lead the NFL in receiving yards this year. I actually did make that argument on a previous video on the Bottom Line View where I said he would lead the NFL in receiving yards. But why? Why, Mitch? Why? Well, he's 26 years old. He's flat out in his prime. He has a really good quarterback in CJ Stroud, who's extremely accurate. And the situation around him. The receivers around him, no Tank Dell, who was very good in terms of his rapport with CJ Stroud. Obviously, a big name like Stephon Diggs isn't gravitating those targets. Christian Kirk is there, right? But he doesn't have the rapport that Nico Collins does with CJ Stroud. And then the rest of the guys there are rookies. Higgins, Noel, or Noel, depending on how you want to say it. They're rookies. Joe Mixon is injured, and we don't know when he's coming back, which means potentially the volume of the passing game will rise in Houston. I would expect it to, especially considering not only is Mixon hurt, but also it's a new offensive coordinator who comes from the Patriot and or Ram background, both, right? Nick Caley comes from that background. I'd expect more pass attempts. I think they're going to lean into CJ Stroud this year. They're giving him more opportunity at the line of scrimmage to call his own audibles, call his own plays, call his own protections, which I think is brilliant and a great idea. I think Stroud can handle it. And I think that they're going to want to, on early downs, throw the ball more. Maybe screen the ball to Nico Collins more. Throw a quick slant to him. Get the ball out, right? And I also think within that system of Nick Caley, we're going to see Nico Collins not only lined up on the perimeter, but moved around and get more opportunities in different alignments, like Puka Nacua in Los Angeles. So I think that will also raise his floor from week to week and raise his target volume as well, which will lead to more big plays, more catches, all that sort of stuff. And in terms of talent, he's a top 3 talent at this position, in my opinion. Last year, and the year before, the last 2 years collectively, he's the highest graded receiver in football by PFF. Not second, not third, first. The highest graded receiver in the NFL. And he's arguably the best on a yards per route run perspective against man and press coverage. He also is first in yards per route run over the last 2 seasons as a whole. Man, zone, all of it. So Nico Collins is legitimately absolutely elite. The only reason people don't actually talk about him like they do with CeeDee Lamb, or like they, who I think he's better than, like they do with A.J. Brown, or like they do with Jefferson or Chase, is because he wasn't drafted in the first round and he didn't have an immediate impact in the NFL. But over the last 2 to 3 years, Nico Collins, and ever since CJ Stroud has come into the NFL, Nico Collins has been one of the best receivers in football. He simply has no skill set that's left untouched. He's got great hands. He's tall. He's fast. He's big. He can do it all. So Nico Collins is an absolute awesome pick. He could be the wide receiver 1, finishes the wide receiver 1 in fantasy this year. Okay, guys, before I get to my third pick on my best picks in fantasy football for 2025, I do want to give a mention. The reason I'm making this video on the Bottom Line View is because I'm starting a new channel and I'm pivoting my recent idea of BLV Beyond, if you guys were aware of that or not, but I am creating a new channel, and this channel is going to be a fantasy football channel and a betting channel. So it's going to be called Money Mitch. I already just released a video talking about my least favorite picks in fantasy football for 2025. So it's the partner video for this video, right? So go check it out after this video. Money Mitch, go subscribe. I'm going to have a ton of betting breakdowns. It's going to be like daily content. So essentially, I'm going to have 2 channels running almost daily content throughout the NFL season, and it's going to cover fantasy football and it's going to cover betting. So it's going to cover point spreads, my spread picks, so best bets, all that sort of stuff that I did on this channel, it's going to be over there. So I'm still going to be doing picks on this channel and things like that, but it's going to be another channel for you guys to get more of Mitch over there, and it's going to be money, okay? It's going to be Money Mitch. So go check that out if you love my content. If you want to see a different side of me in terms of that fantasy perspective, then go over there and subscribe. And for those of you wondering about the BLV Beyond idea, which was going to be a video essay channel, I just feel like this is going to be more of a consistent producer of content for you guys to actually have some entertainment. And I feel like I can do those essays here on the Bottom Line View whenever I do feel like. So that's the pivot that we're making. But go check that out, guys. Go subscribe to Money Mitch, please. It would really, really, really help. And go check out the videos. They're going to be good. They're going to be just like this content, just in different style in terms of fantasy football and betting. So go over there, check it out. My third pick is going to be Drake London. for one of the best picks in fantasy football this year. So basically, guys, we are going in order of ADP. If you guys haven't recognized, this isn't necessarily in order of like the best players you can pick, although it kind of is because it's in order ADP, but it's in order of your draft. Okay, so Drake London also goes in the second round, just like Nico Collins. Nico Collins goes at the top and Drake London goes at the bottom, but depends on your platform because Nico Collins might go in the first round and Drake London might go at the beginning of the second, depending on what platform you're playing on and also what league you're in. Like a PPR league will definitely push Nico Collins into the first round, Drake London into the top of the second. But either way, if you could land both those receivers, that would be a beautiful start. Two of my targets for sure. So Drake London, I think, is the most underrated alpha receiver in football. Last year, he was graded as the 7th best receiver in the NFL. He was second in contested catches, and he was one of 4 receivers last year to have 100 catches, 1,200 plus receiving yards, and 8 plus touchdowns. The only other receivers that did that were Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Drake London was in that category of collective, well-rounded production, which I love, especially in a PPR format. London is a guy that can catch 100 passes, especially considering Michael Penix is going to chuck the football. His ADOT and his ability to throw the ball downfield is immense, and it's much greater than Kirk Cousins. And I believe that the Falcons are going to pepper Drake London, because even now, Darnell Mooney has been a bit banged up this training camp, so the rapport is only built with London. London's just entering his prime. I think he's about to go crazy. You know, last year, he was wide receiver 5 in PPR last year. And I don't think people recognize that. He's certainly not being drafted that way, right? He's being drafted as like the wide receiver 10 or like, you know, closer to a bottom end wide receiver 1, where I feel like he's going to be a firm every format because of his well-rounded production wide receiver 1. So I love Drake London this year. Then we have Chase Brown, also being picked in the second round, depending again on your format. Overall, though, he's actually being, I think, undervalued in drafts. His ADP is 24th overall, which would be the last pick in the second round. And in my opinion, we will be talking about Chase Brown next year as a first-round pick, like 11th overall, 10th overall, 12th overall. I believe that's where he will be going in drafts next year, okay? And you can get him in the last pick of the second round or in the middle of the second round, and I'd be comfortable picking him all the way until like the end of the first. Like, I honestly think that he could be that good. Chase Brown ranked 3rd in fantasy points per game over his final 8 games of 2024. He is an absolute workhorse running back on one of the best offenses in the NFL. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns. He has well-rounded production. He's going to run the ball. He's going to catch the ball. Right, he was 8th in receiving grade by PFF last year. He's been literally compared by his own coaches to a player like Austin Eckler. Remember Austin Eckler in his prime? I think he actually had 1 year where he led the NFL in PPR points per game. I could see Chase Brown in a Bengals offense being a top 5 running back finish because he's going to get the touchdown opportunities, because he's going to get the third down touches, because he's going to get just consistently a ton of touches in a really good offense. And his quarterback throws the ball. His quarterback is not a runner. So he's going to swing it out to Chase Brown, right? So I just feel like I would take Chase Brown over a lot of the guys that he is being picked behind. I would take him over Jonathan Taylor. I would take him over Josh Jacobs. I would take him over Devon Achane. I would take him possibly even over Derrick Henry if you're in a PPR format. So yeah, I love Chase Brown this year. I think he goes crazy as that 4th player on the list. The 5th player on the list is going to be George Kittle, who's going as the last pick of the 3rd round. I love George Kittle because I don't love the 3rd round in general, and the ability to secure a reliable top-end option at tight end or one of the onesie positions, quarterback or tight end, is a really effective thing to do in this round. So if Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, George Kittle are in this range of the 3rd round, I like those picks because a lot of the picks in the 3rd round this year are just not very good picks overall. So his ADP, George Kittle, is 36, and he goes as the last pick of that 3rd round as tight end 3. I also feel like he's considerably lower than Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, which also makes him a good value. George Kittle is matchup proof, He's set it and forget it for your lineup, and you never have to worry about tight end for the rest of the season, which is a beautiful thing, and knowing those frustrations. He was tight end 1 last year in standard formats. He was tight end 2 in half PPR, and he was tight end 3 in PPR formats last season. So top 3 across the board. Brandon Ayuk is out for the first 5-6 games of 2025. That boosts George Kittle. Juwan Jennings currently has a little bit of a contract and a little bit of an ankle situation. That boosts George Kittle. They do have Christian McCaffrey and Ricky Pearsall, but the number 1 target in the receiving game right now in San Francisco, that's probably a top 5 offense in the NFL with the best play caller in the NFL, is George Kittle. And you can get him at the back of the 3rd round. He was the number 1 tight end in yards per route run last year, the number 1 tight end in PFF grade last year, and it's only round 3 capital compared to Brock Bowers going in the middle of the 2nd, Trey McBride going at the end of the 2nd, George Kittle 3rd round. So yes, he has more competition when everyone returns than those other guys, and he won't put up the volume. He's definitely better in half PPR or standard formats in comparison to PPR because he won't catch 100 passes, but I wouldn't be surprised if Kittle just, like, once again had a spectacular Hall of Fame type season, which it just feels like he is a lock to do. So that's why he's my 5th player on this list. Kenneth Walker is one of my favorite running backs, and I almost reach for Kenneth Walker more than most players in fantasy this year, especially in best ball formats. His ADP is 40th this season, and he is going as the 4th pick of the 4th round as running back 16. Now, I think that's crazy because, honestly, Kenneth Walker might be the best runner in the NFL. Like, he is spectacular as a pure rusher. He's the best tackle avoider in the NFL. In terms of missed tackles forced per attempt last year, he was by far first. The only reason he isn't, like, appreciated the way that Bijan or Gibbs or Henry or CMC are is because he plays behind a terrible offensive line. He's had terrible offensive coordinators, and he's been injured. But if Kenneth Walker can stay on the field, which I understand there's a bit of risk, but it's already baked into his draft position as a 4th round pick when he could give you 1st round production. If Kenneth Walker was the 11th overall pick in 2026, would anyone be surprised? He's in his prime. He was 12th in points per game last year, right? With a terrible offensive line, like terrible, right? He was constantly hit behind the line of scrimmage. He also set, like, his personal best for receiving yards, for receptions, for targets. In fact, you know, the only guys that had better rushing grades than him last year, according to PFF, were Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson, 2 elite players that were going in the 1st and the 2nd round, or even the 1st for both of them. And then the only guys with more targets, which is interesting because this has been kind of one of the negatives for Kenneth Walker in recent history, is the only running backs with more targets are Kamara and Achane last year. So you have a guy that have a well-rounded profile at running back that can be explosive, that can make people miss, that catches the football, and all he has to do is stay healthy in a Kubiak offense that wants to run the rock down everybody's throats. This is a steal of a pick. Like, this is a locked and loaded, if he stays healthy, RB1, no doubt about it. Love this pick. He could honestly win your league. Next, Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams is the definition of league winner if he hits his ceiling. Jameson Williams right now is wide receiver 28 by consensus rankings, 63rd overall, which I think is insane. I also really do like George Pickens and Calvin Ridley in this range, and it was tough to choose between the 3. But I feel like Jameson Williams has a ceiling of being a top 10 actual real-life receiver in the NFL. I've talked about this when he was drafted. I was a huge fan of Jameson Williams, and I still am a huge fan of Jameson Williams because I honestly think he might be the fastest individual in the NFL. Like, he might be faster than Tyreek Hill. He might be faster than Devon Achane. He might be faster than Xavier Worthy. Like, there's literally not a player that I watch on a weekly basis that is more explosive than Jameson Williams and creates more separation at wide receiver. Like, there's plays where guys aren't even in the screen covering him. Like, it's absolutely outrageous. Last year, he averaged 15.3 fantasy points from week 10 through week 18. It's a pretty good stretch, right? That ranked 22nd among receivers. Right now, he's being drafted as wide receiver 28. Over the last 8 games, he had 7 targets, 73 yards, and a half a touchdown per game. If you were to put that into a full season, that would be wide receiver 1 potential, okay? And, with Ben Johnson gone, I think there's opportunity that the Lions actually steer away from Amon-Ra a little bit more and get Jameson more involved, because Jameson is simply a more explosive player. Amon-Ra is also coming off a surgery this offseason, so I feel like there is more reason to get Jameson more involved. Also, he was the only, this is one of my favorite stats of any player in the NFL, he was the only player to have 8.8 or 8 plus or even 7 plus, but he had 8.8 yards before catch and yards after catch. No one was even close to him last year. He's simply the most explosive player at his position. Wide receiver 26 in points per game, and he's being drafted wide receiver 28 this year. It just doesn't make any sense when you would expect him to ascend this season in year 2 of really being a real player in the offense. Tetairoa McMillan, I think, is also a league winner this year. On a platform like Underdog, he goes as wide receiver 19. This is a more sharp platform where there's a lot of big money, tournaments, and he is wide receiver 29 by consensus. So wide receiver 19 on Underdog. A lot of people believing in him with real money on the line. Wide receiver 29 by consensus. He checks all the boxes as a receiver, as a prospect, okay? Draft capital. He's the primary target in his offense. Undisputable, right? Bryce Young, upside young quarterback. Nice. Offensive-minded coach. 10 touchdown upside. He's a massive target that can score a touchdown far away or on a fade in between, the 5 yards, 10 yards. He could be very much used like Mike Evans was for Canales in Tampa Bay. I could see similarities there. And he also had a monster target share at Arizona in his final year, 34% target share at Arizona in his final year. He's also having a great camp and a great preseason. There's clips of him burning one of the best corners in football, Derek Stingley, in joint practices. So he is legitimately a talent. He is going to explode, and I predicted him to be the offensive rookie of the year, so I'm backing him in all ways, shapes, and forms. Ricky Pearsall is also a young receiver that I love. And I've always loved Ricky Pearsall. Even when people thought that he was overdrafted, I defended the pick. And I think that he proves himself this year. He is wide receiver 38 by consensus. He's going 116th on ESPN, which is free, 102nd on Yahoo, but he is 60th on Underdog. 60th on Underdog, 116th on ESPN. It's a beautiful pick in your drafts, okay? He could end up as a definite wide receiver 2 in fantasy, and he has a small chance of being a wide receiver 1, depending on the injuries of Ayuk, the status of Jennings. Pearsall has a legitimate huge ceiling this year, right? He was a hand-picked first-round pick by Kyle Shanahan to replace Deebo Samuel. Bye-bye Deebo, right? He's also a really good, crafty, quick route runner, which I think is the difference between Deebo and Pearsall. He looks incredible at training camp. Like every day they talk about how good he is. And then at the preseason game against the Raiders, it showed up instantly on the first drive. I think he had 3 catches for 40 plus yards on like 5 plays. So he was just constantly being peppered with targets from Brock Purdy. He showcased a couple big outings late last season when he was healthy from the bullet wound that he suffered. And he's also, I think, quietly, right, an elite athlete. And the reason I say this is because, let's be fair, he's a white receiver. So a lot of people look at him and they just don't see a ton of upside. But he's actually an elite athlete. He had an elite shuttle time. He had an elite 3-cone. He had an elite, insane vertical jump. And he also had an insane broad jump. He also ran a 4.4 in the 40. So he's not slow, and he's extremely quick, and his hops are ridiculous. So Ricky Pearsall is a legitimate great athlete. So that's where I feel like people are kind of sleeping on him because he's a white dude. But like, honestly, like that, I think that's not something that people actually bring up because they're not bold enough to. Next, we have Tyrone Tracy, the 10th must draft player. Running back 29 right now, 85.8 overall, or 86, right? He is going 95th on ESPN and 89th on Yahoo. All the players that I like are going late on ESPN, so draft on ESPN. But I really don't get this one. First of all, Cam Skattebo, he isn't good at football. I watched him play. I studied him entering the NFL. He isn't good. I've watched him in the preseason. He isn't good. So Tyrone Tracy, I liked him in the draft. I liked him last year. I told you guys to pick him as a late fantasy pick when I was over there on Owner's Box Fantasy. Tyrone Tracy was my guy. So everything, we're continuing this. So they bring in like a mid-round slow running back, and people are scared to draft him now. It doesn't make any sense. He's basically a locked and loaded RB2 in fantasy that's going as a 9th round pick. Like, that's beautiful. He's explosive. He's flashed creativity and vision, you know, and really he's still learning to play running back. Last year was his 2nd year playing running back. He played 1 year in college. You know, he transferred from receiver to running back, played 1 year at running back. Then he got drafted. Then he played 1 year in the NFL, immediately took the starting job when he wasn't supposed to as a late round pick. And he has become their starter. Like, people are just kind of like not buying into it. I don't know why. But last year, his healthy 17-game pace was 260 touches, 1,390 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Like, Tyrone Tracy can catch the ball. He's a former receiver. He's explosive. He's got really good speed, and he's got solid size. I think he's a steal where he currently goes in drafts. If you want to pick a running back early and wait on an RB2, I think he's a great target. Drake Maye is my quarterback target this year, not only because he's the quarterback of the Patriots, but because I think he is also a weirdly cheat code fantasy quarterback. He is QB 16 currently by consensus, going the earliest on Yahoo and Underdog around 111th, okay? But the funny thing is, he's going later than what he averaged as a rookie, behind the worst offensive line in football, with the worst receiving core in football, with a first-year offensive coordinator, and the dumbest head coach I've ever seen. Drake Maye was QB 14 on a per-game basis last year, and he's going as QB 16, okay? He also averaged more rushing yards last year than Josh Allen without designed rushes. Josh McDaniels has already talked about how he wants to design rushing plays for Drake Maye. He also led the NFL among all ball carriers in yards per carry. And he's an extremely explosive passer. He's very creative outside the pocket. And he's a fun player. Like, Drake Maye is genuinely, if you have him on your team, you're going to be excited to watch him because he's fun to watch. And he has a better offensive line. Josh McDaniels as his OC. Stephon Diggs as his wide receiver 1. I think the general offense will be better. They drafted a left tackle 4th overall. They added a stud running back in Travion Henderson. And he has more experience. Like, there's really nothing about the situation or the player that should not be better in 2025. I expect a top 10 quarterback finish because of his rushing ability and because of his potential breakout as a passer. So Drake Maye, definitely on the list. Josh Downs, I think, is a beautiful PPR pick this year. And I think this is almost like a scam because people thought Anthony Richardson was going to start. Now it's Daniel Jones, and Daniel Jones boosts Josh Downs in all the best ways, especially in PPR leagues. He is, you know, the 118th consensus player, but he's actually going 141st on ESPN, which is insanity. And he's going as the wide receiver 50, which is outrageous. Guys, Josh Downs quietly is one of the best young receivers in the NFL. You can check his reception perception numbers. You can check his yards per route run, all of it, right? Yards per route run, 16th in the NFL last year. Targets, right? In per route run. Targets per route run. 4th in the NFL. 4th in the NFL. Top 5 in the NFL. His receiving grade, 11th in the NFL. Josh Downs is really good. Josh Downs is really good at football. And who's his quarterback? Daniel Jones, the guy that spammed Wan'Dale Robinson with the football last year. That is who Josh Downs' quarterback is. One of the best slot receivers in football gets a guy that wants to throw the slot receiver. So Josh Downs, I love him, especially in PPR leagues. as like a wide receiver 3 if you wait and try to stock up on your flex, your tight end, other positions. Love him in that format specifically. Next, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers is going to be my later round tight end option. I could have went with Tyler Warren, but I didn't want to put 2 Colts consecutively. And I also feel like Tyler Warren, everybody's talking about him. So I'd rather go with Tucker Kraft. Packers fans and writers are raving about Tucker Kraft and his camp so far. We've already seen him be very productive in the NFL. He was first in yak per reception at the position last year by nearly 2 yards. He was 2 yards higher than number 2 in yak per reception at tight end. He breaks tackles like a madman. He's entering his prime at age 25, which is typically where tight ends take a big leap. Christian Watson is hurt for a good portion of the early season. Jaden Reed is banged up entering the year. Their wide receiver 1 is a rookie. Jordan Love is probably going to be more healthy this year than years past or last year. And Tucker Kraft being a good blocker keeps him on the field pretty much every play, unlike a lot of other tight ends. He's essentially a mini George Kittle. He's great after the catch. He's a better athlete than you would think, and he can block. So I think he's in a really good offense, in a really good spot, where it's a little bit of an ambiguous who is the best target on this offense. It could very well be Tucker Kraft, and I don't think we're talking about him that way. Braelon Allen is going to be my sleeper top fantasy pick of 2025. He's going as the RB 45 overall and the 137th player. Braelon Allen is your best last chance at 250 touches in a season. He is going to be in a 1A, 1B split in New York. Aaron Glenn comes from Detroit. The offensive coordinator comes from Detroit, where they split Montgomery and Gibbs. Allen could play that Montgomery role, and I think he is, honestly, there's a real argument he's better than Hall. Like, there's actually an argument here that he could take his job, right? Like, last year, Brees was not a good player. He's like 46th in PFF grade. Like, he was not a good player last year. Allen is big. He's young. He's physical. He can catch the ball. And Hall has an injury history. This is going to be one of the most run-heavy offenses in football. So I feel like he has a good floor, being that he's going to split work on early downs. He has a good contingent upside because if Hall gets hurt or he just takes his job, he's going to be a steal of a pick. And the offensive line is low-key pretty talented too in New York. And they're going to have to run the ball because they don't have great receivers. And they have Justin Fields. So love Braelon Allen as a sleeper pick. And my super sleeper pick, 15th player, must draft, is Keaton Mitchell. I think he is an excellent handcuff selection because think about it this way. What if old man Derrick Henry actually gets injured? If you picked Keaton Mitchell with the last pick in your draft, you have a running back that as a rookie averaged 8.4 yards per carry. 8.4. Not 4.4. 8.4 yards per carry. In 2023, only Devon Achane scored more fantasy points per touch than Keaton Mitchell. He got hurt, right? And now he's fully healthy. We saw it in the preseason. He looked really, really good. He is the early down option for the Ravens if Derrick Henry gets hurt. You have potentially an RB1 if Derrick Henry gets injured. So love Keaton Mitchell with like basically free in your draft. So those are the 15 must draft players, the best fantasy picks of 2025. Guys, please go over to Money Mitch, subscribe. Throughout the season, I'll be covering fantasy pickups, ads, drops, trades, starts and sits, all that sort of stuff, including bets, all that other stuff for the NFL on that channel. So go subscribe, go support me over there, and thank you so much for watching. It's Mitch. Good luck in your fantasy drafts. Peace.